I am AI avatar of CA Ratan Mundra. Today we are analyzing a very important enforcement order issued by the International Financial Services Centres Authority, commonly known as IFSCA. This case involves Transhermes Aero IFSC Private Limited, which is a registered aircraft operating lease company. The purpose of this video is to understand not just what went wrong, but also why even small compliance gaps can lead to serious regulatory action. This is not a case of fraud or financial crime. Instead, it is a case of operational non-compliance, which makes it even more important for all IFSC entities. We will break down each observation made by the regulator in a structured and practical manner. We will also understand what defense was given by the company and where it failed. Most importantly, we will learn what better compliance strategies could have avoided enforcement. This case is a strong reminder that in IFSC, compliance is continuous, not optional. The regulatory action in this case started with multiple surprise inspections conducted by IFSCA. These inspections were not a one-time event, but repeated over several months. The authority visited the premises on the 23rd of August 2024, then again on the 6th of November 2024, and later on the 2nd of June 2025. The repeated nature of inspections clearly indicates that regulators were closely monitoring the entity. During each visit, the authority observed similar issues, which raised serious concerns. The most important issue was that the office was found closed multiple times. There was no proper operational presence or active functioning observed. In addition, no key managerial personnel were available during inspections. These repeated failures formed the foundation for enforcement proceedings under IFSCA regulations. One of the most critical observations made by IFSCA was that the registered office of the company was not operational. During inspections, the premises were found closed, with no employees present at the location. Even key management personnel, who are required to ensure regulatory oversight, were not available. This creates a major compliance red flag for any regulated entity. Because in IFSC framework, registration is not just a certificate, it represents active business presence. When a company shows no physical or operational presence, it raises doubt about whether it is genuinely conducting business. The regulator expects continuous operational readiness, even if the business is in early stage. A non-functional office directly signals non-compliance with registration conditions. This became one of the strongest grounds for enforcement action. Another key violation identified was the failure to display the certificate of registration at the office. This may seem like a small procedural issue, but regulators treat it very seriously. The display of COR is a basic requirement under financial services regulations. It ensures transparency and confirms that the entity is officially authorized. In this case, the certificate was not displayed at the registered premises. The company admitted this violation and stated that it was an inadvertent oversight. However, from a regulatory perspective, admission without strong evidence weakens the defense. A better approach would have been to provide documentation showing immediate corrective action. This includes photographs, compliance records, and internal audit confirmation. One of the most serious allegations was failure to deploy adequate resources. During all inspections, the authority found no manpower at the office. There were no employees or key managerial personnel present. This raised questions about whether the company was actually operational. IFSCA regulations clearly require regulated entities to maintain minimum operational capability. Even if business activity is low, basic infrastructure and governance must exist. The company argued financial constraints and inability to commence operations. However, regulators generally do not accept financial difficulty as a valid excuse. A better defense would have included hiring plans, outsourcing arrangements, and a compliance roadmap. Another violation was the non-payment of regulatory fees within the prescribed timeline. Regulatory fees are mandatory obligations for every registered entity. In this case, the company failed to pay annual fees on time. Although the company later admitted the delay and stated that payment would be made at the time of proceedings, the dues were still outstanding. This means the violation was considered ongoing, not cured. Regulators view such delays as weak compliance discipline. A stronger approach would have been to clear all dues before the hearing itself. This would have demonstrated seriousness and willingness to comply. One of the most damaging aspects of this case was the failure to respond to IFSCA advisories. The regulator issued two advisory letters, one in December 2024 and another in June 2025. These advisories were meant to give the company an opportunity to correct deficiencies. However, the company did not respond to either of them. There was no compliance report, no explanation, and no communication. From a regulatory standpoint, silence is considered non-cooperation. This significantly worsened the company's position in enforcement proceedings. Had timely responses been submitted, the case might have been resolved earlier without escalation. After reviewing all facts, the authority confirmed multiple violations. These included non-display of COR, lack of operational presence, and fee defaults. However, the authority also acknowledged that some corrective actions were taken later. This became an important factor in the final decision. Because of partial compliance and rectification, strict penalties like suspension were avoided. This shows that regulators do consider corrective behavior before final action. However, the violations were still serious enough to warrant enforcement proceedings. The authority emphasized that compliance must be continuous and not reactive. The final order required the company to clear all pending dues within 45 days. This included payment of regulatory fees along with applicable interest. The authority made it clear that non-payment would result in restrictions on business activity. Specifically, the company would not be allowed to undertake new business until compliance is completed. The enforcement proceedings were then disposed of with these directions. This indicates that the regulator focused more on corrective compliance rather than punitive action. However, the warning effect of the order remains strong for all IFSC entities. It reinforces the importance of timely compliance in regulated financial environments. This case provides extremely important lessons for all entities operating in IFSC. First, every regulated company must maintain an active and functional office at all times. Second, manpower and key personnel must always be available or properly documented. Third, regulatory fees and statutory obligations must never be delayed. First, any communication from regulators must be responded to promptly and professionally. Second, inspection readiness must be treated as a continuous compliance requirement. Third, documentation of all compliance actions is essential for defense during audits. Finally, proactive communication with IFSCA can prevent escalation into enforcement proceedings. The key takeaway is simple. Compliance is not periodic, it is continuous and mandatory. Moon Says and Management Consultants LLP, a trusted partner for SEZ and IFSC excellence, a pioneer in establishing SEZ and IFSC units within GIFT City in India, delivering end-to-end IFSC setup, operational support, and handling compliances, risk management. Renowned for deep expertise in regulatory approvals, capital markets, fund management, insurance, finance company, foreign university, BATF, and ancillary regulations, and fintech. Expertise in customs clearance for aircraft and ship procurement, leasing, GST, DSPF, IFSCA, comprehensive support covering registration, reporting, and regulatory transitions, ensuring ring fencing, transparency, and global compliance standards. Join our network. Scan the QR codes below to stay connected with us.